What is up, Jacksonville? This is your man, Tony Wiggins, with another edition of Locked On Jaguars. Here on a Friday, we're going to keep talking about team building. This time, we're going to talk about running backs and the knee-jerk reaction to every time that there's a good or bad play by running backs. People always come back to Jacksonville and their history with running backs. We'll give it to you. That and more here on a Friday edition of Locked On Jaguars.
On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Love that piano. Love that to death. This is your man, Tony Wiggins. Welcome you to another edition of Locked On Jaguars on a Friday, and we thank you, first of all, for allowing us to be your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network and on Locked On Jaguars in particular. We are free on all platforms. I want to discuss running backs. Why am I discussing running backs? Because as I watched last night's game with Cleveland, we saw yet another running back have a really good game and a really good day who's a third stringer. And out came all of the tweets and out came all of the reminders. You don't need to take a running back very high. Why am I saying that? Because the Jaguars have a running back named James Robinson, who was very, very similar to the young Johnson kid that we saw running around in Cleveland yesterday in his style and his vision and the way that he made those cuts. I was watching the game. I was like, God, that reminds me of a little bit of James Robinson. Then here come this is why you don't use a top 4 pick on Fournette. This is why you don't draft Travis Etienne when you already have James Robinson. And you can find running backs anywhere, and they come a dime a dozen. So that's why running backs are devalued, because I'm going to really harp on this. The difference between the fact that there are running backs out there and the fact that they're devalued, right? Let me explain something. It's not as if all of these guys are the same type of player. And it's not as if everyone is capable of, quote unquote, finding one. Because when you look around the league, there are teams that don't have one. There are teams that have one, the other got hurt, and now the backup guys aren't as good. Case in point, the LA Rams. Cam Akers goes down. Henderson's not available. They have to trade for Sony Michel. They're still not running the ball the way they hope to run the football. Correct? Correct. I know it. You don't have to agree with me. I got it. Atlanta, Mike Davis is a good player. Is anybody scared of Mike Davis? Nope. I just watched the Miami Dolphins last week against Jacksonville. They got a running back that scare nobody, right? Yep. You're exactly right. The team that won the Super Bowl, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, were looking for a running back late in the season, and they got Leonard Fournette before they made their run. If you just find a guy, they wouldn't have had to go sign Leonard Fournette, would they? Nope. Who's the backup in New York now that Saquon Barkley's hurt? Don't worry, I'll wait. You see my point? If everyone was, for the sake of this argument, and I'm going to get back to the Jaguars in a minute because I just get sick of people bringing it up. Look, they made a choice, whoever it was in 2017 to draft Leonard Fournette. We got to get over it. They weren't taking Dalvin Cook. They were taking a big running back. So get on the fact that this is what I keep talking about when I bring up in the past guys that have a certain profile athletically. When you go in looking for a big running back, you eliminate all the little running backs. And by eliminating all the little running backs, you eliminated Dalvin Cook. So the problem isn't the fact that you chose a running back. The problem is you chose big running back. And it was Leonard Fournette, and it wasn't Derrick Henry. Because had they chose Derrick Henry, not one person would continue to be complaining about that pick, right? Okay. And if you keep complaining about that pick and saying you should have got a quarterback, then you can't sit here and celebrate the fact that they have Trevor Lawrence. Just continue to look back over and over. It's just wild to me, right? So The thing is it always keeps coming back to the fact that they drafted Fournette. And then they drafted Etienne. They knew they had James Robinson on the roster this year when they drafted Travis Etienne. They didn't draft Travis Etienne because they didn't have a running back. They drafted Travis Etienne because they needed more explosiveness on the field. Now, you say, well, they could have taken a wide receiver. Well, they almost told you basically that they were going to take Kadarius Toney if he was available. But even Kadarius Toney would have still been a player who would have been sharing with the guys that they already had, Shenault, Chark. They signed Marvin Jones. At the very least, he would have been the fourth guy. That's not an every down player, but nobody gets angry. This whole you can find a guy thing. Finding a running back is one thing. Finding the running back you want is another. By the way, if Cleveland hadn't found the running back that they have last night, Johnson, they'd have been in trouble because their other two running backs were hurt. When it comes to this team building thing, I'm convinced that you don't pass up good football players at a certain position just because of positional value. If somebody's a good football player, they're a good football player. Sometimes good football players transcend positions. It's like when the Colts took that guard, that offensive lineman from Notre Dame, Quentin Taylor. People scratching their head like, why are you taking a guard? Well, then he goes all pro and they say, I see why. Washington took Brandon Scherf at some point around the same time, maybe even before that. Folks going, why are you taking the guard? He's okay. He hasn't turned out to be good enough that you passed up other players. But the thing is it's always a situation where if a player's good, you're going to react positively. If a player is not as good as you think, you're going to react negatively. But I saw it come out of the woodwork last night, man. Folks are coming out of the woodwork talking about this is why you don't take. Every time there's an example of a dude running for 100 yards, you go, this is why you don't take one early. This is the factor that no one considers. If certain GMs thought they were good enough to identify running backs late, they wouldn't have to take them early. Sometimes it's an admission that you can't tell the difference. I recall Dave Caldwell and Doug Marrone. Doug Marrone said in the draft that James Robinson wasn't picked, that he and Dave considered taking a running back, but they looked and asked each other, do you see anybody better than this guy? And the guy they're talking about is the 00 guy who used to play here. He's the third running back. He said, nah, we don't see nobody better than him. The people that did not think James Robinson was better than the third running back in Jacksonville or the second running back in Jacksonville are the folks who need to draft one early because they don't know what they're looking at and they can't identify it. Hey, Dave, how you doing? Just whatever. It just makes no sense that we think and we don't give credit. We don't give credit to teams that know how to find guys late in the draft who have the characteristics and the traits that they know makes them a good football player in their system. The Shanahans have done that good forever. And see, it's always flip-flopped, okay? It's flip-flopped. Like if the players, this is what happens. If every running back who ever played for Mike Shanahan ran for 1,000 yards, now they go, see, none of them are any good. It's the system. But then when you get running backs that play their third or fourth stringers or their sixth round picks or undrafted free agents and they play well, then it's like, see, this is why you don't pick them early. Running backs are all over the place. So are they not good and it's just the system, or are they all really good and it doesn't matter who you get? Because if it doesn't matter who you get, there are a handful of teams around the league right now that for some reason are missing the boat because they must not have gotten that line when they were giving out running backs because they can't figure it out. It always comes back to that for me. So it points right back to the Jaguars and go, we wasted 2 first-round picks on running back. All we got right now for the Jalen Ramsey trade is Kayvon Chason and an injured running back. But when the compensation for Jalen came in, everyone said it was a win-win situation. These guys aren't all monolithic. They're not all the same players. Just because you see a guy playing well in Cleveland doesn't mean he'll play well in Jacksonville. It's a combination of his teammates, his system, what they're asking for him, how much they believe in him, the developmental program they have, the strength coaches. There's so many other factors into why a guy plays well, as opposed to just he's playing well because it's who he is. That ain't always the truth. Let's just stop worrying about picks that have been made already and they're gone. Leonard Fournette won a Super Bowl and he's playing with Tampa. Who cares? Who cares? Because if Travis Etienne was in Jaguars camp right now or playing for the Jaguars, running up and down the field, every time you turn around, somebody say, that's why they picked him. There it is right there. You see it. That's why they got him. I just think you just need to get good football players whenever you can get good football players. Now, I know you can't stack up on quarterbacks. You can't just stack up on those guys. But you can have two running backs. Part of the reason why teams are drafting guys early is because they realize they missed on it before. How many teams do you think actually saw Alvin Kamara and then go, wow, I wish we could have saw that. We would have picked him in the first round. So next year they swear that that's what they see, like Ronald Jones, and they draft him thinking Ronald Jones is Alvin Kamara, and he's not. There were folks that compared him. He ain't him. Kamara's different. When you can look at those two guys and differentiate between the two, the reason why teams are picking guys high is because that's who they think they're getting the other guy, and then they end up with him. There is a difference between these players. Don't let anybody sitting behind a keyboard tell you anything different. There's a difference between Dalvin Cook and that kid running for Cleveland last night. It is. All right, man. We're going to talk more about team building. Second segment, we'll talk about defensive ends, pass rushers in the draft. We'll do it just a second here like we always do on a Friday on Locked On Jaguars in just a second. Listen to me, man. I'll tell you about BetOnline all the time. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to get paid while betting on games. I came real close last night, but I took the Clippers because I thought Golden State was going to have a little bit of a hangover from that emotional win in L.A. The first night, but they didn't. So for me, I was wrong, but you don't have to be. You can be right. You need to head over to betonline.ag and take advantage of the new updated desktop mobile website. Sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. All you got to do, man, is use the promo code Locked On. You can bet on basketball. You can bet on football, baseball. The postseason is going mad right now. Boxing, UFC, and there's a fight this weekend with Shakir Stevenson. All the favorite Vegas casino games, everything you want is at betonline.ag. It is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. Make sure you use the promo code Locked On. All right, rolling through here on a Friday. Tony Wiggins here with your Locked On Jaguars podcast. There's this assumption when you have draft talk, and everybody's going to always do it because we now, even though the Jaguars did win and there's some renewed enthusiasm, they're still part of the fan base that has this overall view of the team where they want to peek ahead a little bit and see exactly what it is that the Jags could do to probably enhance their future or make the windfall of wins that we think is going to come one day, make that come quicker. So you're looking at these pass rushers. Honestly, right now, the Jaguars wouldn't be picking first. I think they'd be picking third. At 1-5, tied with the Dolphins, but head-to-head, they beat Miami. And then, of course, Detroit is winless. So right now, the number one pick, if the season ended today, which it doesn't, is not something that's in our grasp. So Kayvon Thibodeau, to me, is number one. There was some talk from some people who we're evaluating the draft with me and some fans that, okay, well, this kid at Michigan, this defensive end, he's good. He's good. He is. He's very good. He's a very good player. But Thibodeau is Godzilla. So this is the point where I got to tell you too, since we're talking about team building and you're making us your first listen. Remember, the word prospect means the most likely to succeed, and it doesn't mean that because I like hamburgers, I don't like pizza. That's not the truth. But Thibodeau has an upside that you don't know who's going to make the Hall of Fame. You don't know who's going to end up with the gold or yellow jacket. But you can guess who's more likely to end up with it based on the motor, the makeup, the intangibles, how hard they go. When you have that outward sort of top 1% of 1% of 1% athleticism that goes along with the motor, there's no replacement for that. Hard work, all of that stuff, because there are folks that always say that hard work beats talent any day of the week. And that could be true. Hard work does not beat a talented person who works hard. Hard work alone won't beat that. A talented person who works hard is going to beat a lesser talented person who works hard. That's just the way it goes. And Thibodeau is special. Darryl Stingley, the cornerback at LSU, is special. So I had this debate, and I was like, there are folks that think that Booth at Clemson and that Elam at Florida are just as good. Guy looked me dead in my face, and I trust him because he has a track record of being correct. And he looked at me, and you ain't going to see me if you ain't watching YouTube, but he looked me dead in my face and went like this. And for those who didn't see me, he had a deadpan look on his face without a smile and shook his head no. He's not. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about there's a difference between guys. How come with running backs we always point out that it's just good enough to be adequate and it's just good, can you get the job done? But when we address corner and wide receiver, we can clearly distinguish the difference between a guy and another guy who's better than him. I think running back is the only position we do that, where we do that. Where if a guy's just good enough to get by, we fall into where you can find a guy, you don't need to use a pick. The only position we do that is running back, as if a truly special running back isn't really different from a guy who's pretty good. But we don't do that at other positions. We just don't. If your safety is decent, you think he doesn't have to be Earl Thomas. If your corner's a solid pro, you don't have to get Deion Sanders. If your guy can be a guy who might be a 10-sack guy, you don't have to get Von Miller. You very rarely hear folks make that distinguish that with running backs. You can have a guy rush for 1,800 yards and you got another guy rush for 1,200 and you'll go, the 1,200-yard guy is good enough. Where do we pick him at? That's fine. We don't need more than that. And for the life of me, I just don't get it and just don't understand. What are we looking forward to with the bye week coming up next week? What are some of the things you want to see from the team? I'm going to tell you what it is for me. And I'll do it in segment number 3 here on Locked On Jaguars after I tell you guys about Built Bar. Built Bar is so good, man, it makes absolutely no sense. If you haven't tried a Built Bar by now, you are missing out. They say it's a protein bar, but it does not taste like one. You have to try one of these amazing bars for yourself to believe. Most protein bars are chalky, waxy, or just plain hard to choke down, but Built Bar is soft, covered in 100% real chocolate, and when you bite into it, you know you're eating something different. It's more of an experience, one that you'll enjoy. In fact, you'd swear you're eating a candy bar. Built Bars are low carb, low calorie, low fat, low sugar, and high in protein. So all the healthy benefits on top of just being purely delicious with so many flavors. Another great thing about Built Bar, there are so many mouth-watering flavors, including coconut raspberry, mint brownie, coconut almond, salted caramel, you know, smiling, double chocolate, and cherry barcia. This month, Built Bar is coming out with the new limited edition flavors every 3 to 4 days. So check the website often, and you don't want to miss out. Here's the offer, man, for you. You go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off of your next order. Now go to Twitter, too, at bar_built to check them out. Make sure you use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built Bar. Well, eat me one as soon as we're done with this podcast. I don't know, man. I'm a little yawny today. I think my allergies are bothering me. And if you're looking on YouTube, you can see my eyes watering because I'm trying to keep from sneezing or coughing. Because y'all don't want me to start having to edit this video, because if I edit this video, it's going to be a problem. This thing going to be all chopped up, right? But in any event, coming off of the bye week, the Jaguars are off, obviously, Sunday. And it's going to be, you know, it's a little weird once football season starts when you have to go that 1 week without watching your team that you cover. But it gives you an idea of some of the things we have to look forward to when they come back. One of them is I kind of want the celebration to be over. And what that means is they won. Everyone's happy. It's marshmallows, sunshine, and rainbows. And we got one. We got a kicker. We see all the memes. Social media teams going crazy, as they should. But now you got to come back and get back to business. Because you get too happy, you're going to get punched in the stomach when you don't expect it by Seattle. And that's what you don't want. All of this momentum can be gone just like that, the snap of a finger, if you don't come back and get down to business. So when they come back, I want to really see them getting down to business, being on point with what it is they have to do, and understanding that the game you won in London doesn't help you any further. The game you won in London is just it. It's a game in London that you won, and now it's in the books. It's already in the win column. So it won't help you one bit when it comes to this week. What you do this week is totally independent with what happened last week or 2 weeks ago. You have to learn how to start stringing them together. The Jaguars are being real good at managing the failures of the team. Now we have to see if we can manage or properly put in place the success of what comes with the win, and that's the success of a team, and see how you can move off of that win. You have to be able to try to put these things together. We always talk about that foundation. When you build a house, you put this brick in the corner, put the next brick in the corner. At some point, you want to see the elevation, and therefore, the Jaguars have to elevate as a team. And I want to see them when they come back. I want to see more. I want to see them get back to the seriousness of it, because I think that's how they pull themselves out of that hole. So stick with that. Don't just get happy now and start smiling and acting like it's a totally new season, because it's not. You have to really, really get back to that work, get back to that workflow that you had, and have that attitude that you had going into London, where every week you have to go out and give your absolute best, because if you don't in the NFL, you'll get slapped around. I got to tell you, thank you for making us your first listen. Your second listen should be the Peacock and Williamson podcast, because those dudes do a fantastic job of giving it to you real organically in a different way. Brian Peacock is an analyst, an NFL analyst, and Matt Williamson is a former NFL scout and with years and years of experience. And when you put them together, man, it's like magic. So it's like peanut butter and jelly, baby. It's good. So you go to the Peacock and Williamson podcast. Make sure you subscribe. on the Locked On Podcast Network to the Peacock and Williamson podcast and make it your second listen every single day. It's the weekend, man, so we got a bye week, but we'll be back. I'll be back Monday with some more content. As I tell you all the time, take care of each other. You knew I was going to say it. And we'll see you Monday. This is Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars.